Warning: the following podcast is intended for mature audiences and does contain spoilers. If you are sensitive to anything in particular, I recommend looking up this film on doesthedogdie.com. It is a user-submitted database that is filled with all sorts of different trigger warnings and content warnings for people who may be sensitive to those things. Check it out and take care of yourself. Welcome back to Wikreeps, the podcast where you can get all of your spooky without any of the scares. I am your host, Evan Exhumed, and every week I provide an in-depth summary, review, and trivia for the latest horror releases, classics, and some weird ones you've probably never heard of. Happy New Year, and welcome to 2024, which is horrifying in and of itself. This is the season finale for Wikreeps' third season, and I'm just going to be going over the top 10 horror films of 2023, in my opinion, as your host. Some of these you might agree with, some of these you might disagree with. Doesn't matter, we're here to have fun and we're here to talk about it. I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers for all of these films and just talk about some of the things that I liked about them without going too into detail about it, so it will be a shorter episode in general. And as a fun little surprise, I will be doing the 5 worst horror films of 2023 that I saw. So, with that said, let's buckle up and dive right in. Number 10 is going to be the 2023 film Good Boy. The basic premise of this one is a woman who basically meets the guy of her dreams, super rich, super handsome, super friendly, and the only thing that's wrong about him is basically he has a human dog person who's like in a fursuit. So that's the whole premise. And honestly, I fucking loved this one. It came out of nowhere. I spent $8 on Amazon Prime to purchase it and watch it as a bit. I thought it would just be really funny and stupid, but it was legitimately compelling and legitimately interesting. There's a lot of little twists and turns in it. And overall, I mean, it's just kind of crazy how this one just is so underlooked. I mean, I think just having the furries be part of the whole situation kind of made people overlook it or push past it. But if you like the movie Fresh, it's basically that and then add furries instead. So this one, this one's hitting the 10 at the bottom of the list, but it's still so freaking good. And if you got the time and the money to watch it on Amazon Prime, I say go for it, because this one stuck with me. And a lot of people who listen to this podcast who I've had conversations with about it know what I'm talking about, because I did host it and watch it with some people when I paid for it. So yeah, no, really great film. Check it out. Super fucking weird. And, you know, if you're like me and think subcultures are really interesting, this is definitely one to check out. Coming in at number 9 is The Wrath of Becky, which was the sequel to the horror film Becky. I didn't really like the first Becky. I thought it was kind of weak, but they did An Orphan, and they brought back a new director and a new writer for the sequel, and it just was so fucking good. It's almost so good that like you don't even need to watch the first one. I'd say you don't really need to watch the first one. It was just funny. It was well acted. The action was great. And just, I mean, the main actress is just so fucking good at playing this role that I just couldn't stop watching. I feel like the humor is a little similar to that of like Deadpool, maybe, like in terms of the carnage and the gore and just her character. But yeah, I mean, I hope they come back for a threequel. I hope they make a third of this movie. It's just really fun. You don't even need to see the first one. Definitely recommend this. Wrath of Becky for sure deserves to be in the top 10 of 2023 for Wikreeps. Next is one that I did do an episode on, which was Infinity Pool. I loved this movie. It's super weird. It's basically about, you know, this couple who goes to this vacation in this foreign country, and then just all sorts of crazy bad shit happens. It's by one of the Cronenbergs, one of the sons. It's so fucking horny. I swear to God, Brandon Cronenberg just wrote a list of all of his fetishes and just said, I'm going to put that in a horror movie because I want everyone to know that I like to do some weird shit. And that was just so fucking appealing to me. I mean, it has a lot to say without really needing to dive in deeper. It has some really cool sci-fi elements to it. There's really interesting commentary on class, new money, old money. Mia Goth is just, mwah, just perfect performance. She's so fucking unhinged in this. I want to marry her. I would do anything to be with that woman. She is just so perfect. You know how I feel about her with X and Pearl and just literally anything she's ever been in. Her alone is reason to see this movie. But Alexander Skarsgård, who's the other lead, he was fantastic in it. And it's just going to it blind. I mean, I told you a little bit about the plot, but even then, that's barely anything. Just go into it blind. Prepare to get weird. Prepare to get sexy. It's just a wild fucking movie. And have probably seen it 6 times this year alone because it's just so fucking good. Coming in at number 7 and not number 6 is Scream 6. What can I say? I'm a sucker for these films. I fucking love Ghostface. I have a couple Ghostface masks in my house. And I feel like these movies just keep upping the ante. And just, you'd think you'd get tired of all the meta jokes and commentary on modern culture, or rather modern horror. And you don't. I mean, it's just so well written. It's extremely unfortunate that the whole Melissa and Jenna Ortega stuff happened. But with that all aside, Scream 6 is so great. And even then, like, this could be the last in that, character's story, and I'd be fine with it. I'm looking forward to Scream 7, whether or not it has those cast members or it's a brand new story. I don't care. I fucking love this franchise. It's smart. It's fun. I mean, they gave... I can't even get into it. I don't want to spoil it. It's really fucking good. I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of the Scream movies, just go for it. You'll enjoy it. Coming in at number 6 is Saw X. Look, I know what we all know about the Saw movies. A lot of people call them torture porn. There's a shit ton of them. They came out every year. The quality can vary. Chris Rock did that remake Spiral thing, which was kind of funny. We all have our opinions on Saw. But Saw X is just... you can't compare it. I mean, it's just so fucking good. John Kramer, the character, is just so well acted in this. And they finally did something that no other Saw movie could do, which was made me give a shit about this character. It's from his perspective. It takes place between the first movie and the second movie. You could pretty much watch this movie alone. You'd only really need to see the first and second movie, honestly, to really understand this. But there's just so much that this movie does better than any other movie in the franchise. I would say this is even better than the first, which is pretty much the highest rated film. I think it actually did get a higher rating on Rotten Tomatoes than the first, which is saying something for a 10th in the series. So if you're not a huge fan of Saw, I still really recommend seeing this one. You only need to watch the first movie and the second movie and then this movie to really understand what's going on. Technically, there's a little bit more you could watch, but it's really not necessary, especially if you're not a huge fan of it. But just everything in this movie is good. It's just a fucking fantastic film. Check it out. Highly recommend it. Next on the list at number 5 is going to be Megan. This was one of the first movies that I reviewed in 2023. And just everything about this film was so perfect, especially for a PG-13 horror film. It is poignant in terms of its social commentary on AI and technology. But then again, you can just watch this movie, turn your brain off, and have a great time. Megan, the character, is fucking iconic. They already got greenlit for a sequel, Megan 2.0. I will be there first day in the theaters. And just like I said, overall, it's just... this movie is exactly what you want it to be. If you want to just go to have a good time, you'll have a good time. If you want to go in for some thought-provoking Black Mirror type horror, you're going to get thought-provoked. And again, she's iconic. Megan is basically the new diva Chucky. I mean, she's just perfect. I can't get enough of her, and I cannot wait for the sequel. Check out Megan. Watch it with your friends. Watch it with your squeamish horror buddies. It's a good introduction to horror. It's just a good movie for everyone involved. You'll have a lot of fun. Sitting at number 4 was one that I did not expect to be this high, and that's Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, which I did do an episode on. If you want to listen to more about that, go check it out. But this movie, holy shit, it just blew me away. I have never really liked Eli Roth. I always had a bit and a joke that Eli Roth has never made a good movie. He's made many bad movies, many okay movies, but this, I had to adjust my words. Eli Roth has made one really good movie, and that is Thanksgiving, which will be having a sequel in the next coming couple years or so. So 2025, I think. And this movie was just smart. It was funny. Eli Roth toned down some of the like edgelordy jokes and gore that his movies are pretty famous for. It was well constructed. The slasher villain is iconic. John Carver, holy shit. I bought an action figure. I was so excited. I bought an action figure. It'll be coming in a couple weeks. I can't wait to put that on my, display shelf. And yeah, I mean, just, I would say that the main characters were kind of a little weak, but other than that, like, I had no complaints. The kills were fantastic. John Carver as a horror movie slasher, amazing. I mean, there's just so much to this film that's fun, and I will for sure be watching this every Thanksgiving because that's how much I fucking liked it. I've seen it 3 times in the like last month, and I just really cannot recommend it enough, and it totally deserves to sit at number 4 in my top 10. Now we get to the top 3, and for number 3, this will be the Hulu film No One Will Save You, which is actually a sci-fi horror film. And in case you didn't hear, there's no dialogue in this whole movie, this whole hour and a half of a movie. And I barely noticed because the film is just so well paced. It's action packed. It's interesting. It has such a compelling protagonist, and she says like nothing. There's so much that they tell you in this movie just on screen without having to speak it to you or tell you. And I'm not a really huge fan of sci-fi, but this movie just blew me away, and I cannot recommend it enough. It's just such a trip. The aliens are really well done. The acting just through her physical, gestures and facial reactions and just the screaming and fear and things like that. It's just unlike anything I've ever seen. And as someone who often can get bored when there's not really a lot going on or not something interesting, I didn't think that this would be in my top 3 because of this, but it's still just the way that they handle it, the way that everything's done, the way it's acted. This film is something you got to see. And it's not too scary because, the aliens are kind of CGI and stuff. So it's not going to freak you out too much unless you're afraid of aliens, but it's just so damn good. And I really, really recommend you see it. It's on Hulu. Check it out. No One Will Save You. You got to see it. Sitting at number 2, and well-deserved, is Evil Dead Rise. When I saw this in theaters, I was shook. I legitimately was just fucking at the edge of my seat, staring at this goddamn screen. I mean, the title card alone sequence, that is just like, I'm never going to forget that scene in the theaters. And if you didn't see it in the theaters, I feel bad for you because it was just such an experience. And the acting involved, phenomenal. The plot, exceptional. And just everything about it is just so well crafted and so good that I cannot wait for the next one. Call me a fake horror fan. I'm not super in love with Evil Dead 1 and 2. I personally think the remakes of Evil Dead 2013 and Evil Dead Rise are better films, and this film truly solidifies that. I feel like we've come so far from those movies, and those movies deserve respect. They deserve credit for what they started, but this is just, you're giving the best that you can to the next generation, and that is what this film feels like. It feels like we're really getting the best that we can get for what the Evil Dead franchise needs to be in 2023. And, Mommies with the Maggots, if you know, you know. Holy shit, what a babe. I mean, I'm crazy about this movie. I've seen it like 4 or 5 times. And if you can stomach it, check it out. If not, listen to the Wikreeps episode on it. It's just so fucking good. And just the gore was amazing. I can't say enough about this film. I have a whole episode on it. So go listen to the whole episode. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to stop talking about it. And finally, my top number 1 of 2023 is going to be none other than Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid. Now, don't come at me. This film touched me and got into my brain and was insidious and just, I couldn't stop thinking about it for months. Everything about this film just hit so fucking hard that I can't even explain the things that it's done to my brain. It's basically a Jewish everything everywhere all at once. Ari Aster said it's like a Jewish Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's just so insane. I mean, the commentary on anxiety, on Jewish identity, on just, being afraid of tackling your demons. There's just so much to unpack in this 3-hour film. And yes, it's a 3-hour film, and I'm still ranking it number one. Everyone knows how I feel about longer films. I usually don't like them. They're usually pretentious. And this movie, maybe it is a little pretentious, but I fucking love it. I've seen it 5 or 6 times now. And this is, again, a 3-hour movie. I've watched this movie fucking 5 to 6 times since April when it came out. And I'm just obsessed. I really, wish I could have got those goddamn pajamas that A24 was selling on their shop. I missed out. They didn't have my size. But just Joaquin Phoenix in this is just so relatable in a lot of different ways. As a Jewish person, as an anxious person, as a person being afraid living in the 21st century, there's just so many themes and just so many elements to this. If you want to hear a little bit more about how I feel about it, you can go listen to that Wikreeps episode as well. I definitely did an episode on this in, I think, June. And yeah, I mean, this is just 5 stars, the best film of 2023. Nothing else came close to just getting under my skin like this film did. I saw it in theaters, and by the time the movie was over, I was so shook by it that I sat through the entire credit sequence just reeling. And I feel like that in and of itself says a lot about this film and how deeply it moved me and affected me. So you definitely have to check it out if you can afford 3 hours. Otherwise, go listen to the podcast episode on it. Go watch an analysis on it from anyone else. It doesn't matter. I love this movie, and I really just can't get enough people to watch it. You might not like it, and that's fine. It's kind of divisive. Some people love it. Some people are confused by it. Other people hate it. Whatever. I think either way, we can all agree that we're pretty confused. But I loved it, and I really hope that everyone I know gets to see it so I can keep talking about it and never shut up about it. Now that I finished the top 10, let's go ahead and have a little fun with the 5 worst horror films of 2023, in my humble opinion. Sitting at number 5, I'm going to have to say The Boogeyman. I love Stephen King. He is an exceptional author. I've read like 40 of his books. I am a fan to the end. And this film just didn't really impress me. It's not that it was necessarily bad. I think 2023 was a pretty good year for horror. So this being number 5 definitely says something about the year, considering I watched probably 30 or 40 films for 2023. And it just, I feel like the story and movie, if it was made in the 70s, it would have been really interesting. But the whole concept of, a monster sort of being parallel to that of dealing with grief and just some of the themes that it had, it just wasn't anything impressive for 2023. And so while I think technically it is a good movie, it's a solid 6 or 7 out of 10, it just didn't impress me. And so that's why it sits at number 5. For number 4, we're going to get with When Evil Lurks. And yes, come for my throat over this because I fucking am so sick of this movie. Beautifully acted, very cool visuals, very cool that they kill a bunch of children and people in this. I'm all about that. But just the writing of the characters and their behaviors were just so fucking stupid that I had to put this at number 4 of the worst horror films that I've seen in 2023. Yes, all of those other things are really good about it, and I really, really, really respect the amount of effort and energy that went into it. But he wrote the writer wrote himself into a fucking corner. I mean, the lore was really interesting, the world was really interesting, but he made it too good and too succinct and made it make too much sense that he was just basically like, in my opinion, oh, I'm just going to make these characters do the stupidest shit because I explained too much and gave too much exposition. So if these characters actually understood these rules and knew these rules, the movie would just not have any conflict. So that's my opinion of it. I did an episode on it and why I think it's a bad movie, despite looking really good and being really well shot. This 100% deserves to be in the top 5 worst horror films of 2023. I know a lot of people are going to disagree. I don't care. You're wrong. I'm right. Let's move on. I'm just kidding. It's fine if you really liked it, but I just didn't. So sitting at number 3 is going to be Nefarious, the 2023 film. This is basically Christian right-wing propaganda. The whole premise is just around a serial killer who's like possessed and a detective who like is trying to interview him and figure out whether or not he's possessed. And it just felt like a Lifetime horror movie, which it, basically was. Like some of the stuff doesn't even make sense. Like the devil character is like guilting the detective for doing bad things. But if he was the devil, wouldn't he be encouraging it and be really happy with him? I don't know. One of the dumbest movies I've seen this year. Dog shit, truly. And just don't ever watch it. It's not even fun bad. It's just frustrating bad. And it's just, I mean, maybe see it with some friends while you're high so you can make fun of it. But again, I didn't enjoy it even as a bad movie. So definitely skippable unless you really like to just rag on like Christian alt-right media. Sitting at number 2 is going to be Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Unfortunately, the premise is hilarious. The film itself is so fucking bad that, again, it just wasn't even enjoyable. I watched this with a group of friends. We were drinking, trying to have fun with it. And it's just so dumb that I couldn't get into it. It's just bad. I mean, it's just like this person really didn't try. I think that the gore and the masks were whatever, but just the whole plot and just the pacing and just everything about this movie was just boring, dumb, and just not fun. And for a movie that's, a Winnie the Pooh parody, you expect to have fun. And despite being in the perfect conditions, I did not. And because of that, that's sitting at number 2 of the worst horror films of 2023. Finally, for the worst film of 2023, nothing could compare to this, is The Outwaters. This movie was so unfortunate because I watched it twice. I gave it 2 shots, two chances to really wow me, and it just sucked. I mean, the first 40 minutes of it are just people just fucking around with cameras, and then it just sort of descends into complete nonsense. It's one of those films that could be interpretive and you could really like try to figure out and decipher the meaning. But here's the thing. I don't think the writer or director actually has an answer for what really happens in this film, because none of the theories that you really could go down the rabbit hole of make sense, because there's so many conflicting ideas. Like there's like time travel and hell, and like it's just so much that I was just like, this guy just basically just threw in a bunch of ideas to be confusing and make it look like it's this crazy interpretive movie that is really deep, but it's just not. It's just complete nonsense with some shock value. And I just don't understand why people like this film. Also, I'm pretty sure that the director has like a huge foot fetish, because this fool is just filming toes like for 30% of the movie. And his defense is, oh, well, that's kind of realistic and how that would, that's how people would behave in that situation. But I'm like, okay, but I don't think realistically people would be filming their entire experience going to like crazy purgatory hell nonsense. So you can lift up the camera to show us what's happening. And the worst thing about this film is that it's so fucking dark that it's like staring up into the moon in a dark sky with no stars. Like that's the amount of light that I'm given with these fucking flashlights. And even more upsetting is that there's a part of the movie in the very beginning where they show how good their flashlights are and how much they light up the area around them. They like pay extra money to get these fucking flashlights, and they're not even used in the fucking movie. I mean, it's just this little tiny circle of what's going on. And I understand the intention of trying to do that, to make that scary, because you can't really see what's going on, but it just ended up being so fucking stupid and boring that I feel personally violated by this film and having to watch this man's toes for like 45 minutes and just to have such an unsatisfying conclusion. And, they were trying to go for the whole Blair Witch Project thing where it's like, oh, is this real or not? Which doesn't really work that well in 2023, because you know, everything is public, so it's very clearly a movie. But anyway, maybe if you like Skinamarink or those types of movies where it's just kind of nonsense and doesn't really make sense, and you're kind of drawing your own map to try to look for deeper meaning, this might appeal to you. But this is the worst fucking movie that I watched in 2023, and I will continue to talk shit about it unless I meet the director, and then I'll be a polite human being and say, well, you know, it just wasn't for me. Because I'm an adult. And I have my own podcast, though, so I can talk shit about it, and he's probably never going to hear this. And if you do, I'm sorry that I was so mean about it. I'm actually not that mean in real life. People like it when I'm sassy on here. So anyway, with all that said, that was my top 10 of 2023 and my top 5 worst of 2023. Thank you so much again for joining us for another season. I can't believe we hit season 3, 12 episodes, a little shorter, but I think it makes more sense to do 3 months of episodes, take a month off, and then do 3 months of episodes, etc. Repeat. So yeah, thank you so much for listening in. I hope you have a wonderful New Year's. I hope you make many resolutions that come to fruition, or make no resolutions. Live your best life. Continue to just be who you're going to be, and just hopefully you're a better version of that this year. I will be taking a month or so off from episodes, but I will still be producing content on my TikTok or my Instagram, making funny videos, so you can check me out there. You can check me out on Patreon or buy some t-shirts on tpublic.com. All of those links are going to be at Wikreeps.com. That's going to take you to my link tree, and then you can just access every aspect of this podcast in as many ways as you'd like. So thank you so much again for joining us this episode and for this season. I will see you all in a little bit. I'm going to go relax, go watch some more horror movies, and just chill out. But there's one thing that I'm not going to forget while I'm doing all of that, and I don't want you to forget it either, and that's to stay spooky out there.